or sometimes used as wiping cloths to wipe up oil in oily industry. Shoes would get, most of the shoes would get shipped to Africa, etc., etc. And what we did is said, hang on here, there's loads of stuff here that we can resell in Camden. And we left examples. We were the first to ever do this. We left examples with all these women and said, right, if you save us out stuff like this, we'll pay you X, we'll give you a tip, etc. And to the shoddy and Mungo owner, the factory owner, we would say, we'll pay you more by weight than you're getting from by shipping it to Africa or whatever. We'll pay, you know, we were paying double, but it was still like costing us 10p for a, if we got a 20s dress or a 1950s dress that weighed hardly anything, even by weight, it was costing us 10 or 20p, and then giving 50p or a pound to the ladies who were sorting it. And we were selling it for 25, 30, 40, 20s dresses, hundreds of pounds. So the margin was crazy, but it was a win-win for everybody. It was you know, number one, the stuff, and the stuff wasn't, you know, was being used again and again and again. I mean, a lot of stuff as well, I must say, was going into landfill a lot because it couldn't be used. There was too much stuff for it to be, and you know, we can talk about more about that later, but the amount that was going into landfill as well was pretty shocking. And so the women, the sorters were gaining, they were exponentially increasing their wages. The owner of the factory was making more money out of us than he would selling it somewhere else, and we were having it away crazily at Camden. It got to the point where we had 16 stalls and we were taking £10,000 a weekend for a rent of, I don't know, the rent was probably no more than 200 quid in the end. We had 16 stalls on Camden, and we opened them all around the UK. And you know, just the scale of it was, by the age of 21, we'd bought a house for cash in London, in northwest London, a Victorian house, out of, you know, basically out of just being able to know what to do with second-hand clothes and second-hand shoes. So I'm not going to tell the whole story, but Red or Dead came out of that. We ended up being the main designers for Dr. Martens. We changed Dr. Martens from just being black boots and shoes to what they are today. I became MD of part of Dr. Martens because we learnt all that from having second-hand Dr. Martens and learning about that as well. Oh, it's frozen. Can't move it along. Hang on. Oh, there we go. So at the same time, Geraldine had, and I don't need to tell this story much really, apart from the purpose behind it. So Geraldine at the same time took a stall in Kensington Market. I carried on playing in a band. That's me on the left-hand side, and Geraldine, as well as doing Camden, and Geraldine. That's not me on the left of that picture. That's me on the right of the picture there, with the guy with his arm around me. And then Geraldine opened a place in Kensington Market, which was a repurposed old department store in Kensington that had been split up into lots of different units. And there she created the label Red or Dead, got an order from Macy's. That story is told very well. Actually, it's not told on our website at the moment because we're just revamping, and that bit hasn't gone back on, but it will be back on very shortly. But I think the important thing to talk about is, you know, Red or Dead grew over the 18 years that we started it and owned it into a pretty big business. 23 shops around the world, employing 300 odd staff, and a turnover of 25 million, and profitable every year, decent profits every year. We did it without taking on any staff who'd got any training whatsoever. It was all done from mates who we met in nightclubs and friends of family. Like my mum opened a factory in Blackburn, and Geraldine's sisters did the sewing, and Geraldine's dad did the deliveries and all of that kind of stuff. And it was literally a family business meets a group of club kids who we, you know, just went out clubbing with on the nights that we were not working all night doing this. But also all the way through it, Red or Dead followed the mantra about improving things that matter in life, but and also being purposeful all the way through. So if you look at things like on the left-hand side of that screen now, you'll see the Keyhole clothing collection, where our first denim workwear collection was made for all the right reasons in Full Sutton prison in York, I think Full Sutton was, and that was one of Britain's major prisons for lifers, and we got loads and loads of jip from the crappy press like the Mail and the Daily Mail and all those really, well, that's the worst paper in the world probably actually, but all those all those crappy tabloids having a go at us, saying that we were, because also we were making this out of hemp, and they got the idea that hemp could be smoked. It's obviously part of the cannabis plant, and the tabloids got the idea that the clothing, the fabric was being made in a prison out of hemp, which the prisoners could be smoking. Absolutely scientifically fucking impossible. But that's what the press will print if they think it will sell them a few papers and get at a few people they wanted to get at. But all that did was strengthen our brand with the counterculture millions that were starting to follow us. And our sales just went through the roof. The more they criticised us for doing it, the more it went through the roof, because we were telling the story of actually, isn't it better to retrain, give an interest to people with a chance that when they come out, if they come out, at least they'll have something to think about other than and maybe get a job and maybe. And so we were thinking about the purpose all the time of doing that, and it worked. And all the way through, we were being called the sick face of British fashion, and we would just then play up to that. But also making sure that all the time that we had a message behind what we were doing. We were considering, it's only taken until very recent times that the idea of having on the catwalk, it doesn't all have to be stick thin models, that they could be real people from all walks of life. We were doing catwalk shows at the beginning of the 90s, with real people, and telling, and rather than just models who are basically no more than coat hangers, and that just built up our following amazingly. And then working with Greenpeace right from the beginning. Greenpeace we've always partnered with Greenpeace all the way through, and supporting their campaigns on the catwalk, to the point of even on one catwalk, the one that you've got here on the right hand side, when the French were wrapping, when Greenpeace were wrapping the French embassy in those flags that say "non", because the French were doing nuclear testing in an atoll in the South Pacific. We did a whole collection about nuclear fallout, and we banned all French shops from selling our product that year, which was 25% of our turnover. But again, it was the right thing to do, it was the right thing to do for our clientele. And it built our following, and from then on it just exploded. So we've always been quite. I mean, what does it mean to be a designer that cares about society, which involves caring about the environment, obviously. Well, you've got to be questioning, you've got to co-design, you've got to be brave, and you've got to be generous all the way through it. And I think that's what. That's what we are. And just a little bit more background about us. This gives another example of how we think. If you look at the left-hand picture, I was on a train actually heading to watch my beloved Blackburn Rovers that play out in Bristol somewhere, and looked out the window when we got to Swindon, and saw this housing estate. And the first time I saw it, it had Barratt's logos on it, and it was saying 1 and 2 bedroom flats for 140,000 and all. And I just looked at it and thought, that reminds me of a prison. How the hell have we not learnt to build housing better than that? And I was looking at the way that the only green space they had kind of curved down to a road, and I was thinking, well, if you played football on that, the ball would roll. It was just like everything was just like bad about it. So got back on the train, downloaded some fencing from Strangeways prison and a watchtower from a prison, superimposed it, and realised that actually really it could look like a prison, and then sent that photoshopped image on the right hand side to all of the press and the radio stations and the planning department and the leader of the council and everybody I could think about in Swindon. And the next day I was on the front page. Well, the next time it was published, the front page of the Swindon Advertiser says somebody else another person having a go at our town. I hadn't realised that Swindon was the butt of many comedians' jokes until that time. And then I was asked to go on to a phone-in show on radio, on some Swindon radio station, where I was promptly banned from Swindon, which was quite good. And from there, you know, this kind of, we coined the phrase the Barrettification and the Wimpification of Britain, and started to just be noisy about. We realised that if this was causing so much kerfuffle, and we kept seeing this kind of housing, we should be noisy about it, even though we'd never. We'd sold Red or Dead by then, and this was right at the beginning. This was 1999, and we started to write articles about the Wimpification and the Barrettification of Britain. And before we knew it, I was on Newsnight, and before I knew, next thing, Taylor Wimpey, well, they were called Wimpey Homes back then, contacted us. The CEO contacted us, or the chairman actually contacted us, and Sir Peter Johnson, I think was his name, yeah, and he said, would you come and talk to us? We thought we were going to go. We thought we were going to have a libel case against us for all the criticism we've been doling out on them. And so we went to meet him anyway. And the first thing he said, just want to tell you a quick story that my two daughters, who every year I've given them cash because they were into fashion, and I'd just say, go out and buy stuff. And they saw what you've been doing and how you've been criticising them, and they sat me down and said, we absolutely agree with what Wayne Hemingway's been saying. You know, we wouldn't live in any of the homes that you build, Dad. And it's for all the reasons that he's been saying. And the funny thing is we've been following Wayne through Red or Dead and everything that they stand for. And you've been giving us money every Christmas, and all our Christmas money has always gone on Red or Dead clothing. And now he's criticising what you do, and we think he's right. Anyway, so he offered us the chance to design what we thought was a couple of homes on an estate in Gateshead called the Staiths, and it wasn't that. He asked us if we designed the whole development, which Geraldine agreed to, which was crazy considering we never designed any homes in our life. But we built a team around us and delivered a scheme of 760 homes, which is totally finished, and I think it's the highlight of our careers. And the thinking behind it was so sustainable. But I'm not going to go through the detail of it now. There's been so much in-depth reporting about this development, and you can see all of that on the if you go to hemingwaydesign.co.uk and look in the Staith South Bank in the housing section. There's so much to talk about there, and there's so much to talk about the generosity of it and why people loved it so much. We've always, just coming on to some more recent things, and what you can do with the circular economy. So the Red or Dead stores, and there were 23 of them, the majority of them we ended up learning how to make them out of, and I think this came out of necessity rather than just thinking about, because remember Red or Dead stores were opening through the 80s and into the 90s, and yes, while we understood purpose. Climate change wasn't talked about. Reuse came from the fact of more than anything, it came from the idea of being thrifty and being sensible. And where did that come from? That came from the fact that, you know, I was brought up to never waste anything. And Geraldine was the same. You know, my nan and my pop, my dad skedaddled when I was, my father skedaddled because he never was. So my father skedaddled when I was 3 years old. Never saw him after that. And my mum and my nan and my pop lived in a very small house in Morecambe to start with. And that backyard was my granddad had a small shed, and in the shed he was always making things, fixing things. If a chair leg broke, it wasn't thrown away. He'd be out there fixing it. Every little space in the garden had whatever. I just remember just seeing broccoli, seeing strawberries and raspberries. Every little space was growing stuff, and he was forever making things. I was never bought. I don't want any violins going, but I was never bought toys, but they were made. My granddad used to pour lead into little castings made for lead soldiers, and to this day, I know that there can be issues with lead soldiers, but you know, I haven't died out of it. And and to this day, the fort that he made, this kind of castle that he made for me, is still used by my grandkids. It's been passed down through my kids and now to my grandkids, and the same with a car garage that he made, and so it was always in me, and my nan there was never any food allowed to be thrown away. We had to. The funny thing was that when my nan started to travel, and she taught me how those plastic head caps to stop your hair getting wet in a shower were the best way to keep food fresh over a bowl, and it's just all been that it was just everything. I could go on just telling about the things that I've learned from my nan, but we put that into practice because it was sensible, but also it was done with thrift in mind. The less you spent on things, the more you fixed your clothing, the more you made your clothing, the more. Well, if your shoes broke, you just didn't, you put segs on your shoes. If you don't know what a seg is, you put segs on your shoes so your soles would last longer. Look all of that up. But it was just these things that a lot of it came through austerity in the war years, but also through a lack of money and just a general lack of money, and that when that gets embedded in you, then you start to understand the circular economy. But we've always, so the Red or Dead shops were made, nearly all of them were made from found materials. There was near our warehouse in Wembley, there was an old BT depot that had a night watchman, and they used to just let their big roll. I should have shown a picture of this, but I've got it somewhere. They used to let their big cable rolls just rot outside, and then eventually they'd have a bonfire with them. So we learned how to. We used to get those cable rolls and slip the guards some money to just let us take them, and they became the shoe displays in all our shops, and then but latterly we still kept that going. So if any of you have ever been to King's Cross recently and seen Coal Drops Yard, which is the right hand picture on that. So we played a role in Coal Drops Yard. We worked with them. Last weekend we did a really big event. We work with them all. We work with King's Cross and Argent all the time. There's never a day where we don't speak to them. And one of the projects was to embed when Coal Drops Yard opened, which is a shopping centre at King's Cross, which, by the way, is the best regeneration scheme in Britain in my lifetime. There's no question about it. If you haven't been to King's Cross, go down there now. Look at the before and after. There's a really good exhibition there at the moment about before and after. It's just been done so well, and it's so egalitarian in terms of the spaces that you can go to. Obviously, you've got to be wealthy to buy a flat there, but that's anywhere in central London. That's the case. But you can trade there really cost effectively, and you can play with your kids there for nothing and all of that kind of stuff. But as one of the anchor tenants in Coal Drops Yard, we persuaded Argent, the King's Cross developer, to put a charity shop at the heart of it, because that would show intent, but also cool people shopping charity shops. That's a fact. So we designed this store for shelter, and we designed it with completely and utterly 100% materials that were left over and waste materials from the regeneration of King's Cross. So they have a yard where everything is dumped, and we just went in there and found all of this stuff, including bricks and bits of metal and bits of old scaffolding, and built that shop, completely and utterly built that shop, apart from some of the wiring, but everything else is completely from leftovers. And we proved that you can make it. The shop is beautiful. It does so well. The whole of King's Cross is on turnover rents, like a lot of places nowadays. So we see how well it does. And that was done on a shoestring budget, and it looks $1 million, and that's kind of a circular shop. But we'd learned that to do that in Red or Dead as well. Other things that we do that promote making and remaking. The Festival of Making is a fantastic, and Blackburn is Open is a fantastic story, which again, I won't. It's just to make sure that we've got time left to speak and chat and stuff. And the story behind this is on our website. But this is the national festival for making, and it takes place in Blackburn in the town that I was brought up in after I'd left Morecambe, for many reasons. Well, the first reason is that Blackburn has got the highest proportion of people who get up in the morning and go to work and make things than any other town in the UK. So it should naturally have the National Festival of Making. We started it all off by persuading the council to buy it. There was an empty street there called Town Hall Street, which had fallen into pretty bad times, and the council was able to buy up the properties, nearly every single one of them, for a very cheap price. And we persuaded them to create this thing called Blackburn is Open, where every single shop was gifted for an amount of time, to a maker, somebody who was making something, but we coined this phrase performance making, where they would agree to make things in the window of their shop. So there was guys making skateboards and painting them. There was a chocolatier. There was somebody making new bikes from old bike parts. There was a t-shirt printer, a jeweler, etc., etc. And as long as they did it in the window, and then sold their stuff in the rest of the shop, they could have the shop for free. And that street turned into this thriving street of people going down, because everybody wanted to watch these people doing things. Making is exciting. People would take their kids down there, and that eventually grew into the National Festival of Making, which gets 60,000 people into the town centre. And now that town centre it won Town Centre of the Year award 1919, I think, last time it won it. And also, when we started doing this, there were no bars in the town centre, nothing open after 5:30, apart from a couple of really salubrious, not very nice at all pubs. And within a year of Blackburn is Open starting, there were 9 bars open in the town centre of Blackburn, all opened by young people who felt the confidence to go on and do it. And the town is changing rapidly as we speak now. Now, another project we did was the McDonald's uniform. We set out to do the McDonald's uniform for all 110,000 staff, with a view with McDonald's that it would be completely closed loop. Now, closed loop is the idea that the uniform would never ever end up in landfill, and it would always go back to making the next lot of uniforms. And we set out on that journey at a guess, I reckon this was 12 to 14 years ago, at least 10 years ago anyway. And we worked with a company, an American started company called Worn Again, and the idea was that we were going to change so uniforms like McDonald's, you can't make them in cotton. Obviously, if it was cotton, we'd have been able to solve that one really, really quickly, but they have to have polyester in them, so that the stains, people get very stained working in that greasy environment, that the stains can be washed out, but they last long enough. And that's what polyester is as a fabric. But polyester is not very nice for the environment, in that you can't take even a polycotton mix. Nobody's yet worked out a way of taking the cotton out and discarding the polyester at the end of it. So, we found that there was one factory in Japan that had worked out a way of remaking new polyester from old polyester. And so we thought, okay, we will buy that. McDonald's were going to buy that technology and set up a factory. They thought of 2 places, one in Wales and one, I don't know where it was in Wales actually, and then one near Leicester, where they were going to set up a closed loop factory where we would make the uniforms, and then they would be redone, broken down at the end of their life, and new ones made, new fabric made. But the cost of it was just absolutely crazy, and we worked on this. The uniform was delayed for 2 years while we were trying to do it, and in the end it just couldn't. It was proving so ridiculously expensive that it never happened, and so in the end we ended up doing a uniform that was just, we did some items in cotton, but it was kind of a real cop out from from where we wanted it to be. And and it still shows how the circular economy, nobody, and in the intervening 12 years or whatever, nobody has created, well, we have just created, 12 years later, yesterday I saw the finished uniform of a uniform that is totally and utterly can be closed loop. But the uniform is for Greenwich museums, so the 4 Greenwich museums, Cutty Sark, National Maritime Museum, etc., etc., and it's costing an absolute fortune compared to McDonald's uniform, and obviously they're working in a much cleaner environment than McDonald's. So we are still not. There is still not the answer. If the answer would be that the answer would be for McDonald's that every single uniform would have to cost hundreds and hundreds of pounds, and they'd have to reduce their profits to do it. That's where we are at in the world of circular economy in many ways, but which is sad. But I assume eventually we will get there. Well, obviously we have to get there, or there has to be legislation that McDonald's can't make uniforms that go into landfill, because that's what happens right now. They go in. Some of these uniforms go into landfill, and it's for a company that size, it's absolutely wrong. But there is nobody forcing them not to do it that way. Other projects that we do recently you might want to look at that have been we've just repurposed an amazing market hall. We do this quite regularly, taking old buildings and repurposing them and making them with 100% circular economy items within them, usually made of wood, obviously. We're just doing, this is really exciting, we're repurposing an old pavilion on Lowestoft seafront, completely in the vein of the way that we did Shelter, and we used to do the Red or Dead. We've just done the same to an old railway station to create a co-working space in Bognor Regis, and we live it, so this is the living room. We built a house out of like a warehouse out of recycled stuff, and even the sofas are made from an old boat, which has got a great story to tell, and the carpets are made from retufted carpet and everything. So we actually do live it, and probably one of our favourite totally repurposed projects, if anybody's been there or if you haven't, go to it, is Dreamland in Margate, which was a repurposing of Europe's oldest amusement park, but doing it completely. Nearly every single bit of it again is repurposed materials, and it's the success of it is that really, that people love it. So we've got, if you go onto our website, Hemingway Design, there are so many things that you can see and read about which are similar to what I've just been talking about, and lots of them. And there's blogs that tells the story of how difficult it is. We're very honest about sometimes you can't achieve what you want to achieve, but you don't get anywhere without trying. And that's it really. I think we're on to questions then. I'll stop sharing. More actions.
So thanks very much, Wayne. Inspiring as ever. Please do just open your mics and ask Wayne questions. I'm conscious there's a few in the chat, so I'll try and ask those. Charles Ross is asking if you were aware of a process from a Ullswater farmer, regenerative agriculture. Charles, do you want to ask that question?
Yeah, Gary, it's been championed by James Rebanks, who's quite a famous Radio 4 character. It's called regenerative agriculture.
Yeah, no, we know about that. Yeah.
Okay, no, I just wanted to check in that because I'm not yet seeing it within British companies. Yeah. So I didn't know whether.
There's an interesting project which I think I can talk about now, is that we are working with an enormous landowner, one of Britain's biggest landowners, to look at new ways of repurposing buildings in our town centres, and we have come up with a concept which will be bringing all of that kind of stuff together and into basically a department store that is all about circular economy, and it will be scalable across the UK. So we're working on that now. I can't really say too much about it other than watch this space. In the next year, you'll be reading about it in a really big way because it launches next year. So yeah. You're going to read out questions, are you?
Well, I'd rather do it in a more organic way because it'll take me a while to read. So, Peter, there was a question about hemp. I'm not sure if that came from Peter Evans, and whether you think there's value in Wales looking at growing hemp and then manufacturing clothes from it. I think that was the question.
Is the value in growing hemp? Well, yeah, I mean that is used now. That's become fairly standard to make kind of linen type fabrics and workwear type fabrics, but it's not crossed over. It's not crossed over to the mainstream, but it is. You know, it's back then it was completely brand new, and you know I think I remember the fabric guy bringing it to us at Red or Dead, and we were all excited about it. One second, my wife's just asking me a question. Bear with me. Yeah, back with you, sorry.
No worries. Any other questions? Mark Robert Davies at Public Health Wales.
Yeah, thanks. Not so much a question for me, just more of a comment, just to say, as I said, just to make the obvious case, I suppose, from a public health perspective, this is all huge potentials to have huge gains for the health and well-being of populations. I know we're not necessarily using the word health, but all of this is really good for health. So yeah, just to make that point, really, that yeah, all great stuff. And I suppose from a health perspective, it's really good to, I suppose, be involved in these conversations because yeah, there's only so much we can do from a health perspective, but actually so much of the potential is through others doing the work for us. So yeah, just to make that case, and yeah, it's great stuff. Great to hear all this. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Peter, did you have a specific question, and/or did I do your question justice?
This is the hemp question, Wayne. Sorry, I don't want to be fixated on hemp. My daughter, by the way, is going to be so excited to hear that I've seen you on screen today. Anyway, the question is, I about the sort of hemp thing. I know that some of the traditional traditional manufacturing industries in the Northwest are doing stuff on hemp. I've also just seen a thesis from a BA student in Wales, you know, just caught my attention really, and she was talking about the potential for Welsh agriculture to sort of get on board with production. You know, the idea is great. The delivery is probably going to be a bit harder.
I mean, anybody who wants to send us, so I'll give you the email address at Hemingway Design, because we're always really keen to hear about these things. And also, if anybody wants to correspond with us about stuff, before I forget, it's just info at hemingwaydesign.co.uk, 1M in Hemingway, and we have a whole team of people here who are really interested, because you'll be, people on here will know stuff that we don't as well, obviously. So feel free to contact us outside of this forum.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, I got a question from Simon Roberts.
Thank you. Hi, Wayne. I was just wondering if you're familiar with the Waste Not project that's happening in Newtown in mid Wales, where they've actually they take stuff from the recycling sites, you know, the skip sites effectively, and they're repurposing it and repairing it. And what they've done,
I'd love to see a link to that if you want to send it.
I can try and sort something, but they've actually bought bookmakers on the high street in the middle of Newtown.
That's brilliant.
It's very similar to the way you were saying there about people showing things in the windows, and they have repair cafes and everything, and it won an award, a national award last week.
Well, so I'd love to see that if you send us it.
Okay,
it's called Waste Not. You're saying it's
Waste Not. If you just Google Waste Not Newtown mid Wales,
Newtown, Mid Wales. Okay.
Newtown, Mid Wales. But yeah, you'd probably be it's quite an interesting initiative, I think, and it
Yeah,
sort of ticks all the things
at
that
it
you're
later.
talking about. Thanks, Wayne.
Thanks, Simon. Rachel Knox, hand up.
Hello. Hang on, I put myself on. Oh no. I just wanted to ask it in 1980s. Being a little bit older myself, I remember there was not as much legislation about what we did and where we did it and how we did it. Now there is an awful lot of legislation that makes it very difficult for projects to start and people to get involved in innovative. Even things like waste disposal has to follow very strict the strict guidelines, which makes it harder. You can't just walk in and take stuff and use stuff. You've got to be qualified to look after it. And do you think we need legislation that encourages innovative design and for us to become more circular? Do you think we need to change the rules that allow this freedom of innovation? Well,
I think there's a real fear of damaging profit. And so that's why governments tend to not. I think there needs to be more legislation, yes, to force the hand, because I think businesses. It depends on the scale of the business. I think a lot of large businesses can actually afford to do a lot more, but at the same time, shareholder value. They're driven by shareholder value, and they're driven by the city, and the city is still not judging. It's still not judging people on their judging businesses enough on their purpose rather than their bottom line profit. But I think, but increasingly, I think profit can come from purpose, but I don't see enough sticks at the moment, and that kind of hit big business. And it's in a way, like the fact of like COP26 showed that in that there was this fear that how long we could actually decide to say from tomorrow. Well, look, how long did it take for diesel vehicles to it's 2025. You can't. I think it's 2025, isn't it, when you can't buy a diesel vehicle? But that could have happened. That could have happened 5 years earlier. The car industry would not have gone back. Would not have gone bust. It would have just innovated faster. There are certain you wouldn't want to hurt small business, because that that sometimes they can't innovate, but certainly big business can.
I'm thinking about we've got Burberry, which is burning all of its stuff so that it doesn't lower the profits. But it
must have stopped doing that by now, though. It must have.
Yes, I think there's been enough of outrage, public outrage for that. But even now we've got H&M that's got the take back stuff. You can take back your things and you can recycle them, but they're creating so much more than they can possibly ever recycle.
Yeah, well,
but that's marketed as the way forward. This is circular, isn't it great?
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem. And also there's a tremendous amount of greenwashing. If you, for example, I saw something on Primark's window recently. Fast fashion is a disaster, really. But Primark had on their window something like talking about a collection that was made from completely sustainable cotton, and that's great, but actually, and they got in all the papers about it. But when you looked at it, it was only 1% of their stock. Now, really, what they should be doing, if they had purpose, would be to say, they should be saying 1% of our stuff is circular and 99% isn't, and we're ashamed of that, but we're working towards it. If there was an honesty, but they can get away with putting it all over their windows, and then the stupid media start to talk about this collection, and that's 1% is you can't get more greenwashing than that. But yet people will have gone out thinking, oh yeah, Primark are doing quite well, aren't they? They're on the. I read about this climate change and they're doing a bit for it, but it's minuscule, and we all fall for it.
Thank you. Question from Adam Cox.
Sorry, thank you, Gary. Hi, Wayne. Trouble getting off mute then. You've clearly had a business ideology where you've put purpose before your profit at all points, from getting material from the north and then bringing it back down to the south to sell. If there was one piece of advice that you could give any public or third sector colleague in the room today to try and move towards that purpose being the driver before anything else, notwithstanding their need to purchase in an ethical and pragmatic fashion, what would that be?
Well, I think the main thing, if it's public sector, I think is bravery, and quite often it's hard to be brave in the public sector, and also you get it. It's very easy to just do your job and keep your head below the parapet. But these things, it's in the way that we can all look at what Extinction Rebellion are doing, and it can be seen as disruptive, and it can be seen as damaging. When people, when they sit on a motorway and they stop and they bring all the traffic to a halt. But if we really believe in things, we are going to have to work a lot harder than we do. And the thing is about, if I look at what does it take to be purposeful? Well, it definitely takes longer hours. there's no doubt about that. It's not just, oh, we'll be purposeful today and we'll get the job done as well as if we weren't purposeful. It takes longer. It takes harder. Everything is harder to do. It doesn't stop. This team lives it. Red or Dead we lived it. And I wish it wasn't like that. Sometimes, to be honest, sometimes I wish that we weren't like this and we could just switch off at 5:30, go home, have dinner, and put the football on. But it's never like that. It's never like that. You're forever having to work twice as hard to achieve things. And how do you do that in the public sector? We work with the public sector all the time, but you're never going to get a whole department thinking we can pick and choose a small team of activists, because that's basically what we are. But how are you going to do that in the public sector? And it's only because we're all like this that we achieve it. But how do you achieve that in the public sector? I actually don't know. My answer is I don't know. I think you almost have to have like this. I think you almost have to make enemies within your own structure, because I see in the public sector a lot of people who will take the easy way out. And why wouldn't you as a human being? We've seen that through the pandemic, how it's fantastic to be able to get into green spaces and own a dog and walk your dog and do all those nice things in life. And if you get the chance to do it, why wouldn't you do it as a human being? But if that means that we're not pushing forward as we need to push forward, then that's an issue as well. So this is really, really difficult, because it's about the human psyche that we're talking about. It's about how hard do you want to make your life? How much of a hair shirt do you want to wear when you're only here for 40 years and then you're off the earth? And sometimes it can be. I know that I have forsaken fun sometimes and I've got 4 grandchildren, and sometimes I think, bloody hell, I could be spending more time with them other than trying to solve these fucking issues. And before I know it, I'll be dead.
Thanks very much for that, Wayne. And Tony's had his hand up for a while. One suggestion I'd make to that last question is join the CAKE programme. We're creating networks of change makers across South Wales, and we'll give you the opportunity to change stuff and to work with other people that want to change stuff in a circular economy way. Tony Burnett.
Cheers, Gary. I'm part of the CAKE team, Wayne. We've met before. What I'd like to ask is just to try and extend that, and there's a biggish public sector audience at this meeting today. If you were to sort of give them one bit of generic design advice, you know what I mean? The braveries, I agree with you, the shift in behaviour is really, really important. But is this any sort of generic design advice? That's the message we're trying to get across as a group at the moment.
Well, everything should try and be second. Think second hand first. It has to be like that. If there's any way that you can do anything second hand, you should do it. And you start with that by shopping in I am 100% today in second hand clothes, 100%. Most days, apart from my undies and my socks. But most days, if you start like that, and you run your car. We have electric cars, but we'd run them right to the ground. Everything you think like longevity, and you think about second hand, but it doesn't mean you have to live like a tramp.
Great answer. I can see Kirsty's had a hand up for a while. So Kirsty, Paul.
Hi there. Thanks, Wayne. This is massively inspiring. I wanted to ask about the qualifications and credentials you're looking for people that work with you. And do you have any?
No, we don't want any credit. No, I couldn't give a damn. It's about attitude. It's about attitude of getting things done and having an understanding what's needed. And so we never look. We honestly never ever look at credentials. So we never look at qualifications.
So is that experience based then?
No, we check on loads of young people who've just got the right attitude.
Fabulous. Thank you.
We talk a lot about skills, knowledge and attitude and understanding those three in terms of what people are trying to achieve. So I think we reinforce that on Cake. Any other questions? There's a number of hands up, but I'm struggling probably to get round them all. Did I see your hand up, Phoebe?
I've got to go on to another one at 12. Well, I've got to go on to a meeting at 12, but so it's not quite 12 yet.
No? Okay, in which case, thanks very much, Wayne. Always a pleasure, always inspirational. I will put your website on the end of the recording. Unfortunately, we had a slight technical issue at the beginning, so we might miss off the beginning of your of the audio. But you're happy to share the presentation that you've used.
All right, then. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and feel free to contact Hemingway Design.
Thanks very much, Wayne.
See you later. Bye.